Hello and welcome to the next episode of Python for Chemical Engineering Calculations. Today we're going to talk about functions. And functions in Python, similarly to many other programming languages, they can be compared to functions in math, but they're more than that. So let me start from an example of a function which is very much similar like we have in math. Let's say I want to calculate f of x, which is x squared minus 2x plus 1, right? So what I need to do, and I'm so far writing just comments, I need for a given value of x, which is an input variable, I need to calculate a certain value of y, which is an output variable. And here's how you can do that in Python. A function is introduced with the keyword def, definition. Then you enter the name of the function. You can call it f, like we called it here. And then you list the input variable or variables, plural, here in the brackets. Then this is followed by a colon. And note that this block is indented, similar to the for loops and if-else statements. Here you calculate your value of the variable y, and then you return your variable y. So this function does exactly what a mathematical function of this form would do. If I run this script, nothing happens. The reason is we didn't really call our function. So in order for a function to be executed, we need to call it, right? So if I now do f of x, well, it's gonna give me an error because x is not defined. So I need to define my x first, and let's say x equals 1, and then I can run it and calculate f of x. Well, the script executed, however, it didn't print anything because we didn't print anything. So what we can do, we can say print f of x. And well, f of x for x equals 1 is 0, and this is what my script has printed. Well, I can do it for, well, some other numbers and presumably get a correct value. Well, now I want to emphasize that despite the similarities, there are many differences compared to functions in math. So first of all, of course, functions in Python or other programming languages, they don't have to be mathematical functions. They can do something different, right? And let me give you an example of a function which does something different. Let me comment this out. I don't want to erase it and introduce a new function. Let me call this function greet. And the input variable for this function will be name. So this function, presumably, is going to greet a person by name. So I can do grt, introduce my variable, which will be hello space plus the name. So if a user gives a name to this function, the function will create a string, hello name, then return it. If I run it, nothing is going to happen, right? But now I can do the following. I can ask a user to input their name. I will also finish this line with the /n with a new line symbol so that the next printout will be on the next line. And then I do print greet of name. I apologize. So that this is not name is the name of this variable, but if I want to feed what I got from my input, I should use variable in. That would be correct syntax. So let's give it a try. What is your name? And I'm gonna enter my name, Dr. Gore. And the script says hello, Dr. Gore. Worked out, right? So, and that has nothing to do with math. Well, another difference with mathematical function is that actually a function in Python does not have to return anything. So it can perform certain manipulations but doesn't return a value. So let me give you an example. Let me modify my function to do exactly that. So let me say I want to remove this. So remember, we wanted a user to input their name, and then we wanted the program to print hello name, right? So we actually don't need to return this variable and do it here, but we can instead do the printout here in the function. So here's what I'm going to change. Instead of returning this GRT, I will do here print GRT. And here, instead of printing, I will just call my function with the input variable in. Okay, what is your name? Still the same, and the script does exactly the same thing. Okay, so there is not necessarily an output variable. We don't necessarily return something, but actually we don't necessarily have an input variable. The functions here, unlike functions in math, doesn't have to have an input variable. Let me give you an example. So let me call this function generic greet, and although the brackets are here, I'm not putting anything in the brackets, so it's doesn't have any input variable. And then I would do the following. I would say print hello world. Okay, so, and instead of doing this, I can do a generic greeting. I can call it here generic greet. And if I run my script, well, it will still ask me for my name, but instead of printing hello Dr. Gore, it prints just hello world, because that's what this generic greet function does. So functions in Python can be similar to functions in math, but can be different. The question is why, if they don't necessarily have the input variables, if they don't necessarily have the output variables, why do we need them? And we need functions for at least two reasons. First, if we want to repeat the same code and reuse the same code again and again, so we introduce a function to do that. And second, introducing functions in your code make code more readable. Once you collect a certain number of manipulations inside one function, it makes it easier to follow what you wrote in your script.